Oh, hi everyone. I'm here to say that design systems are important. Yes, everyone knows this by now, but there's so much out there these days that design systems kind of come with a set of expectations, growing expectations. There seems like list of things to have or do in order to have a design system, such as things like get a cool name. um, Obviously, set up design tokens, have a dedicated team,
and a dedicated manager. And of course, open source it. So I'm here to say that our design system has survived 8 years with none of that. Yes, it's possible. It has survived 8 years, 3 technical upgrades, 2 design tool migration, and we tick none of those boxes. Actually, what I'm here to share today is how we ended up doing things that work for us. So not necessarily the appropriate things for design system and what we learned along the way. So before I dive into all this, I just want to share a bit of context and the things we do, because I work at Societe Generale in the corporate and investment banking division. So all services are for corporates and financial institutions. So there are typically things like this. So quite packed interfaces. So this is a trading tool. Ooh, the ratio is, the contrast is very bad, sorry. Hope it's better for people online. So trading tools to trade foreign exchange. So as you can see here, we can trade quite advanced financial instruments, and people can monitor multiple currency pairs at the same time. We also have things like this, which is basically analytics, but for financial markets. And today, our platform has about 130 services and products, and they all use the same design system. It's not been easy. I mean, it's been far from easy. And I'm going to share a few things that we heard, and maybe that will sound familiar. People saying things like, no, we're unique. My project, we move too fast. Also, I prefer blue, not red. And our users, well, they're different than the rest of the internet, I guess. And also, why should I check my work with them? And anyway, who are you? So, yeah, feeling the pain here. So that's the story today. And I think what worked for us can be bucketed into 3 ideas. So how to survive 8 years, how we had to adapt for adoption, embed our organizational goals into our design system, and change along the way. So we'll start with adoption, which is the thing that we all need to succeed in, right? As people who do design systems. Usually people who start on the design system journey, what they try to do is brainstorm about naming. And I get it. Naming is great because it gives you an identity. It's great for branding. It attracts people. You can hire with that. And let's be honest, who doesn't like swag? But I dare to say that there's another side of the coin, because if you have identity, yeah, great animation. You have identity, that means you're also excluding people. If you have branding, that means you want to set yourself apart from the rest of the organization. And swag is great, but it's an artifact. You can take the swag and still not use the design system. So really for us, it was really not about design system as a tool. We really wanted people to understand design system as a way of working. It's about reusing assets, guidelines, design assets, code, all the blah, blah. But most essentially, it's for people who use the design systems to understand that they are part of the bigger whole and that we're all connected. So really what we say is we have a thing that is the design system, but that's just how we work now. And the how we work is super important. Today, our design system is actually called our company name design system. So Societe Generale Design System, SGS. And I dare say that you can't be against it. It has the company name in it. You can't be against your company, right? And it's about the same as you can't really be against a function like HR. And we are not giving HR a fancy name, I think. So yeah, that's how we had to give up having a cool name. Sometimes I still call it a web toolkit for people to understand. So yeah. But I think the biggest mistake we do when managing up stakeholders is failing to articulate what's in it for them, because we're kind of prisoner of a kind of expert mindset. I'm going to illustrate that with sharing how we actually got buy-in to work more than 3 months on something we call adaptive colors. So in 2019, when we introduced dark theme, we started to realize that due to the nature of our interfaces, so you've seen we have, sometimes it gets intense, we have up to 4 levels of hierarchy. It was really easy to introduce accessibility issues because of the color combination. And we had to find a way to fix that sustainably. And we couldn't really go on each project to tell them to check the colors. This was hard to get prioritized, honestly, because there's always so much to do, right? Till the day I saw something in my inbox, which is something like this. Basically, a very upset salesperson sent an email complaining that the client couldn't see the price of a $1 million trends or something. And I saw this email and screenshot. And that screenshot ended up in every roadmap, every presentation. I don't even think I had to mention accessibility issue, because I said, look, clients, they can't see prices, they can't trade. We need to fix that at the system level. And that's how we ended up implementing this, which is today we have a set of colors that adapt. So I'm just going to walk you through this slide because it's a bit hard to read. But basically, using warning here as an example, the color will adapt its hue and lightness depending on the type of element it is. Is it a background color? Is it like a text color? Depending on its properties. How big is the text, as you can see on the side? And on which background it is. And this has been fully automated in SCSS because we didn't want people to refer to usage guidelines because that was going to be too intense for 4 levels of hierarchies. And this is also essentially why we don't have tokens as of today, because we really wanted to keep it easy for people to manage colors, both for designers and developers. So essentially this is how we got buy-in, all thanks to a very upset salesperson, which I don't think is aware of this story. I'll tell him one day. So yeah, whether it's about naming your thing or getting buy-in, adapt to get adoption. So next up, which is how do we embed our organization's goal into our design system? I really feel that sometimes we have subcultures in the company and we tend to, obviously it's more comfortable to stay in a little tech bubble, a little design system bubble. But really, every interaction we have with our stakeholders is really an opportunity to articulate our value, align with their goals and the organization's goal. It's a bit of a mouthful, so I'll explain. Ta-da, of course, we have buttons in our design system, like everyone, but I think buttons really don't get people excited. So instead, we are a bank. We have to deal with a lot of data, or users need to deal with a lot of data. So actually, we have a lot of figures in our design system. And that gets people to understand, because the example we say is that when we want to select a client in any other tool, we want the experience of selecting a client to be the same, because it used to be implemented completely differently before we had a design system in the platform. So that really gets people to understand the value of using components and patterns. And when we started to have components and patterns, what we ended up doing is having also, introducing business patterns, which are reusable patterns for business use cases. I'm going to give an example next, which is something called the 4i check. So anyone has heard about 4i check before? Nobody? Yeah. Hello, Henry. Thank you for raising your hand. So 4i check is something used a lot in finance, and I guess any tool that have to deal with big transactions. It's something that allows, when you have a sensitive process, to have another pair of eyes, so 4 eyes, 4, yes, to check an action. And for this pattern to work, so again, think big transactions, something that gone wrong would be very bad. I'm not going to name anything here. So for this pattern to work, you have to show risky areas of created content. You have to highlight the errors, potential errors raised by people previously in the chain, and allows the current user to input decision. So we had the example of a service who needed a forward eye check, and we've designed it this way. So on the left, you have the data. On the right, you have the warnings. And at the bottom, the action area. And when another service also needed a forward eye check, well, we took it. I mean, not literally like this, but that's how I try to present it to you today. And then, poof, we put it into the new service. Obviously here, this is more like a visual way of seeing things because the patterns also embed things like considering who should provide the forward check. Is it your colleagues, your manager, someone else, a third party? But really here, the idea is to be able to leverage on things that we've validated previously in another service where we've done the user research and the testing and basically building on the knowledge of things that works. So said differently, we are trying to reuse, curate, and evolve patterns to amplify what works. But this is a very design system way of saying things. I am not going to my boss and saying, I mean, maybe he'll understand it. I'm not sure that will get his attention. So another angle of kind of conveying the same thing is more like reducing cost, reducing entropy, and reducing time to market. I can tell you that in the current context in my company, all the top-level executives really care about cost, entropy, and time to market. And I think I can even share a slide that we did to present them a study where we really tried to, on a new project, to quantify the amount of patterns, or business patterns that will be used on another service. So it looked like this. So the table is a bit small, so it's more for you to take a picture or a screenshot if you ever wanted to try to do the same study at home, at your company. But basically, when we did the study, we realized that 80% of the estimated design workload could be reused from other product, which includes the research, the prototyping, specifications, and testing. At this point, you could argue, should business patterns be part of a design system? Honestly, I don't know. But what I know is it gets people's buy-in, interest, and support from top execs, so we take it. Finally, changing along the way. Actually, I'd like you to consider, when's the last time you changed your mind about something you do at work? I'm not going to ask, don't worry. Because we had to scale. I think 2016, we had 10 products. This year, we have 130. And so obviously, we had to change and scale and change the way we operate design system. And well, actually, when I say we had to change, it's not true. It's like we were forced to change. As you can see from this nice collage from Henry actually over there, of all the type of requests and suggestions and ideas we would get on design system. And yeah, it's beautiful collage, but not sustainable. As Amy Hube, who's here today, said in a recent conference on design system dogma, by learning how to change design system, we create design system that can change. And I thought today is so true. And when we talk about changing, it's not just the content, it's also how we operate things. If I take the example of our governance, we changed it so many times, actually. When we started the design system journey in 2014, the design team was super small. We were like 5, maybe. So it was very easy to take decisions. But as the team grew, people started to complain that the meetings were too long and was not interesting. So we moved in 2017 into something we call the benevolent dictatorship, where a few selected would gather and decide for everyone. That worked well until, guess what? People started complaining again that this time they felt that they were not in the loop, kind of not even knowing what was happening anymore. So we changed into what I call decentralized workforce, which we were like, okay, so this time we're going to use GitHub and InVision back then. We name dropped a lot of design tools today to basically document and make decisions asynchronously, so through tickets. But soon enough, people started complaining again. I think complaining is a way to change, honestly, because they were like too much to catch on, and it's just diluted this sense of responsibility that people were saying they were lacking the vision And it was so hard to justify the work on system compared to other projects. So we changed again. To this day, we're still on this setup. I don't know for how long, but it works. We formed what we call a design system council. So it's not a team because we didn't want it to, again, for people to feel isolated and left out. But what we clarified, if you want to work on design system, then you have to be available. And we clarified a set of criteria in terms of availability and what does it mean to be in the system, in the council. And actually, this also allowed us to have political peace because people who are in the council need to have their hands into the design system. So that is kind of fending off opinions for above, I guess. And so essentially, today, this is how we operate. And that really reminds me of the ship of Theseus, but a design system edition. So I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but this ship, but it's a thought experiment, which is if you have a ship and you change every single part of the ship, at which point does it start to become a new ship? And for a design system, it's kind of the same. So after 8 years, we've changed 3 times the tech library, twice the design tool, or design tool, 4 times the design system governance. Is it still like the same design system? But at the end of the day, I would argue that we don't always need to evolve by rebooting or building new ships. Sometimes we just need to learn how to evolve with the current ship. So maybe one thought I would like to leave you with today is do what works for you and not necessarily what you read and hear from the community. Do what works for you to get that option in your context, even if it means that you won't get a sexy name. Do what works for you to align with your organization goals, such as when we had to invest on business patterns and put our design system forward as a way to reduce costs. And do what works for you at this very specific moment of your journey. Again, we change 4 times. Who knows, maybe tomorrow we'll have design tokens, I don't know. But for the moment, it works for us. So yeah, if you want to read up more about some of the stories that I highlighted tonight, we have a Medium blog that I think has really interesting content, so you should definitely check it out. Totally biased. And as for me, you can find me on Twitter, Medium, and LinkedIn. I am Morgane Peng, and thank you very much.